Okay, before we dive into the mailbag, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate everyone that has. And let's answer some questions. You guys know how you get on the mailbag. At John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs and get your question answered here on the show. Let's start with Arturo. What up, John? Longtime listener, first-time messenger. I had one question. I understand that we haven't fired Brandon Staley yet, but I'm sure we will. My question to you is, if we were to hire Harbaugh as our next head coach, hypothetically speaking, my team has been known to underachieve. What are some things you believe he could bring to the table to turn the franchise around? And do you believe that if we did hire him, we could really make a run at the championship? Well, I think this. When Jim Harbaugh shows up places, they immediately improve. And then they immediately win pretty big. Now, I understand he's never won a Super Bowl, and as of right now, he's never won a national championship. But I think relative to 98% of other coaches in college and pro, he is better than everyone else. So when's the last time you guys had a good coach? Marty Schottenheimer? Right? Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn, Mike McCoy. Like, you guys are kind of recycling different versions of average, mediocre. And I think Harbaugh would not just immediately give you credibility, but he'd immediately take you to another level. Now, does that mean win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But you'd go to the playoffs, because I watched him with the 49ers. The GM and him hated each other's guts. The Niners were not going to give him an extension. The team was falling apart at the seams. Willis retired. Kaepernick wasn't playing well. And they went 8-8. Like, think about your same thing that's going on with your team. You're going to win like 6 games. His team, in the ugliest of times, went 8-8. Long time writing in. Love the pod. I sort of had an epiphany today, thinking about the enormous Jimbo buyout and the Deshaun Watson contract. Colin likes to call the Browns a low self-esteem organization. And I think you could probably make the same claim about A&M. Similar to the Browns, the Aggies have perennially underachieved and have always been the little brother to Texas. I think both organizations took a leap of faith on a bad contract. I think there is a legitimate correlation between their low self-esteem and result in decision-making. Well, the Browns were very, very desperate. Like, that's not debatable. The only way they could get Deshaun to accept a trade to their team was to give him the contract, and their owner got involved. And I think in the NFL, the moment the owner starts to get involved in player acquisition, trades, draft picks, especially of that magnitude, usually disaster strikes. So I think the situations are separate. Because listen, when they hired Jimbo Fisher, I'd be lying if I said, I think this is going to be pretty good. He won at Florida State, won a national championship, got him back to the playoffs. Again, they ended up losing to Oregon, but like, it's not like his resume didn't speak to success as a head coach. I think one problem in college is when they got you by the balls, and he had a little success at Texas A&M. When Jimmy Sexton's your agent, he's going to destroy your athletic director, who is just a crowd fundraiser, and a president who's into academia. So I don't think they're quite like, they just circle you like sharks and they take advantage. Like, for example, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that Jimmy Sexton leveraged Kentucky with the A&M thing to get his client, Mark Stoops, more money, which is his job. It's his prerogative. There is no better business if you're an agent than to represent college coaches, because you're dealing with ADs and presidents. You have the advantage. Jimmy has such a big advantage. So yeah, a little, I don't even think it's low self-esteem, because Jimbo was a good, like that was a smart hire. It really was. Look who Texas has hired. Tom Herman's, Charlie Strong's, even Sark. I wouldn't call Sark exactly like Nick Saban or Kirby Smart when they hired him. So I think A&M's more about they got taken advantage of with the buyout. Now, is there a low self-esteem with the buyout portion? Maybe a little. Sometimes, let's face it, we just do bad business deals. I've done them. You've done them. Now, there's a difference between a bad business deal that might cost you $1,000, or if you run a business that might cost you $50,000, that is not that big a deal. And there's another one. If you run a business, like, this might bankrupt us, or this might force us to lay off 5 people. And when you make a business decision like A&M did, even if you have the funds to pay it off, it has ripple effects. So I think it's more, the Haslam thing was period, point blank desperation. To me, the A&M thing was just like, I think you thought you had a guy that could help you compete against Saban and Kirby, and it turned out he couldn't. And I don't necessarily blame them for thinking that. I will support that way. Call me an idiot, but I do. If you're the Bills, do you consider trading Josh Allen for an incredible haul of picks and starting over? Cap hit jumps $18 million to something like $47 next year, assuming the Russell Wilson deal is the absolute floor for such a deal. Also, I live in Phoenix, right near the Raven. Played there many times. Nice DM meeting you, Drew. I would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because what's the point of making a trade like that if you're the Bills? You're just then going to try to acquire another Josh Allen. You have the hardest guy to find. Josh Allen's cap hit, to me, kind of irrelevant, honestly, because he's worth every penny of the cap hit. Why we've talked about Deshaun Watson's cap hit going from 20 million to 60 plus million, because he's not good enough to be that high. The version of Josh Allen, like if he's a $47 million cap hit, I would just restructure. I would guarantee some money and move it back. I think that's what they end up doing. So my first reaction, and I wouldn't even need to sleep on it, that there is no offer you could give me that I would trade Josh Allen. Zero. You could be the Bears and be like, listen, we will trade you the first pick, the 7th pick, and next year's one for Josh Allen. I'd say kick rocks. I would rather have Josh Allen than all those picks, because the likelihood that one, Caleb or whoever, turns into Josh Allen is slim to none. History would show us that. Are the Carolina Panthers the new Cleveland Browns? I think there is an element of impatience, hiring the wrong guys, not knowing what to look for. I think it's a combination of everything. And then your team not being good enough. Because it's like, well, is Frank, should you keep him? You know, that's my thing. Like, what should Hugh Jackson? Like, what Mike Pettin? Like, you hire bad coaches, what are you supposed to do? You got to fire them. But then once you fire them, once you're in a position, I would say the Frank decision is dramatically worse than anything he's ever done. Because he was in position, he had just seen it, and he overcorrected, which is the nature of the world, right? You date someone who has a lot of good things going for and is missing one quality that you like. The next girl could have that one quality, but then missing all the things that you liked about the other girl. So I think that's exactly what he did with Frank to Matt Rule. What did Matt Rule lack? NFL experience. Was over at college coach, right? And that was a major mistake for Dave Tepper. And also, you know, not viewed as a very dynamic offensive guy. So what does he do? He hires a guy who's just the NFL, Frank, player, coach, who can coach the quarterback. And in his mind, he overcorrected. But it turns out Frank's not that good of a coach. Frank's not that good of a coach. Whether you believe Michael Lombardi that the Wentz thing helped him lose his fastball, I'd argue I just don't think he was ever that good. He was not getting job interviews 7 years ago before Josh McDaniels turned down the Colts. He was not a candidate for anybody. So when you can't hire the right coach, your organization's going to look like shit. I saw it with the Sacramento Kings forever. They just kept hiring bad coaches. When you're, I don't care what franchise you're in, what industry, you hire the wrong people, it's going to look bad. Even if you got a good product, even if you got some good players, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm 100% convinced that McDermott has to go. There is no leadership right now. In close games, I don't trust anything we're doing. Sunday's game hurt me as a fan more than I can even explain. Can you convince me I'm wrong? Can you shed any hope on Bills Nation? Aren't you guys Bills Mafia? Need some positivity right now. Kevin, here's what I would say. I think Sean's good, and he's proven to be. You guys have won a lot of games together, right? He helped resurrect your franchise with Josh. But those last couple drives, obviously the game drive in the overtime when Jalen scored, debacle right down the field. To me, the ending drive in regulation, when he just goes, he's the defensive coordinator, starts going prevent defense and just giving up easy plays. It's like, what are you doing? Just play normal. If you get beat, you get beat. You tip your fucking hat. But do not go to prevent defense and just give them the right to 8 to 10 yards of play. There's not 20 seconds left, right? They got the ball back with a lot of time. So I thought that was pretty piss poor. And let's face it, the field goal would have been a lot closer if one of the best players in Eagle history didn't essentially jump off sides twice. So it ain't pretty. It's not. But back to, what we've been talking about, who are the candidates? Who are, like, to me, Kraft would not let Belichick go to the Bills. I couldn't let him go to the Bills with Josh Allen. But if I was the Bills, I'd be all over Bill Belichick. I'll promise you that. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the Colts and Shane Steichen and the job he's done so far. Currently, they're 6-5, and if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. He's out winning games with Minshew Mania at quarterback. If DeMeco's name is going to be thrown around for Coach of the Year, then we need to throw Shane in there as well. Totally agree. They win this weekend at Denver. They're 7-5 with their top draft pick basically missing the entire season and playing with a backup. It's an incredible accomplishment. I'm betting against it. I don't think it's sustainable, not because I don't believe in their coordinator or, their head coach who's their coordinator, who's awesome. He's really good. But Jonathan Taylor's now banged up. It just feels a little smoke and mirrors. But sometimes you just keep writing off these teams like this and you eventually get bit. Can you believe we're this deep into the NFL season? We got to make every second count. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every game. Bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on any matchup. So right now, get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. No question from me here, John, but have to be honest. Already can't wait for your rant about NBC giving us the middle finger with subbing in Jason Garrett in the shotgun seat next to Tirico. Well, I talked about it the other night. You can find it, either on the podcast on I guess I didn't do a podcast on Sunday night. It's only YouTube only on the YouTube page. I reacted to the Sunday Night Football and Jason Garrett. Here's what I don't quite understand. I'm all for we all need time. When you're an NFL broadcaster, right, like Collinsworth as an analyst, it's not a 7-day-a-week, 365 job, right? It's like a teacher divided by 4. You work 16, 17 games a year, and you get the rest of the year to fucking dick around. So he's making millions. And listen, I totally understand being with your family and stuff, but Chris, we need you, man. You cannot having to have Jason Garrett as your backup. That's pretty crazy to me. That's a crazy reflection on NBC that he is the backup announcer for Chris Collinsworth. This is the #1 television show in America, and that's who they rolled out there. Very disappointed with their decision, but that ain't changing anytime soon. Longtime fan and aspiring podcaster. My day job is super demanding. I want to pose a line of thinking. I hear you and Colin talk about Fields often, and I regrettably think it's time to move on from him, mainly to restart the rookie clock. I know it's hard for people like you and Colin to consume Bears football at a high level, but I think you should watch the last 5 starts by Field a bit closely. I think he's a product of another failed Green Bay assistant. Last night's game plan and calls ask him to throw behind the line of scrimmage roughly 46% of the time, most of which the defense and the audience knew were coming. I think Chicago will trade him in the offseason and start over. But I hear everyone wanting Caleb, and I have big concerns and red flags for him. Maturity, plays way too much hero ball, which you get away with in college, holds the ball long like Fields, and has ball security issues. Despite all of this, everyone seems to be ready to anoint him. I am not sold, but I don't do this for a living, and your opinion means a lot. Well, here's my thing. Let's go back. And I'm with you. Caleb is no sure thing. None of these quarterbacks in this draft are a sure thing. So just because you get rid of Fields doesn't mean you're getting Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck. I'm in agreement there. Honestly, Caleb makes me nervous just like any college quarterback does, beside like Andrew Luck. So yeah, I mean, it's risky. I do think when you look at Justin Fields, the reason they call a lot of screens is he can function at them. When they ask him to go backwards, 5-step, 7-step drops, what'd you just say? Holds the ball too long. So when I ask him to make decisions, clearly that's a struggle for him, and it does not go well. What were his best plays last night? I can't believe we're talking about this Monday Night Football game, but you're a Bears fan. I hear you. Was when he was scrambling around, right? He made countless plays scrambling to his left, throwing across his body. It was like, damn, that's not a coach. That's just pulling a play out of his ass. He's a great freelancer. Football's not a freelance game in the pros. Football is, you got to play within the confines of the offense. And the offense can't ask him early in the season. What did they do? They asked him to run a normal offense. How'd it go? It was ugly. Everyone's shitting on Getsy, which he might suck. I think he's asking him to run plays that he knows that he can pull off. Right? Of course he can pull off, like when nothing's there, scramble, throw it across his body, make a sweet play to DJ Moore. But if I just ask you to run a normal 5-step drop with, longer developing routes where you have to maybe look off your first option, go to your second option, it's going to take a little bit of time. He has proven that he can't really do that. And you're talking to a guy, I loved him coming out of college because I loved the size, the strength, the arm. But part of playing quarterback, there's an unquantifiable feel to the position, instincts to the position. And when you watch him play, listen, the fumbles as a runner, like if you're going to run the ball, like you might fumble, like Lamar Jackson might fumble. Right? I mean, that's a little freakish to me because I actually like when he's running the ball because it's one of his better, obviously his best attribute. But I think you guys get mad that their offense doesn't look like, I don't even know, the Rams or the 49ers. Like, I don't think they can run that offense, right? I mean, they don't think he could run the Aaron Rodgers offense when he was in Green Bay, even as they meshed it with LaFleur and Rodgers concepts. Like, they don't think he can do it. Now, listen, it doesn't mean coaches are always right. They could be wrong. They might just be wrong. And he has untapped potential. I've seen enough go, I don't know. I don't really see it. I see a guy who's just at this level, it doesn't feel like it's coming naturally to. And it's hard to play quarterback when you can't just drop back and throw. And that it doesn't feel like he can. You have truly made it, my man. While it's ultimately a courtesy of the Taylor Swift effect to see your take not just on the pages of the Daily Mail online, but in the showbiz section of the Mail Online, easily the UK's most visited news outlet, I'd imagine one of the most popular in the world is something. Let's effing go. Travis Kelce looks old and is wobbling for the Chiefs, but it has nothing to do with Taylor Swift, says ex-NFL scout John Middlekauff. He's 34 and has a lot of miles on his body. God, Travis Kelce's a big deal, man. Holy moly. Okay, last question. I was listening to Andrew Brandt's podcast the other day, and he was talking about the cost of running NFL Europe when it folded. They were lousy $32 million a year. It got me, they were losing $32 million a year. It got me thinking, wouldn't the NFL and the NFL ownership be so much better off if NFL Europe still existed to help develop pro-ready backup quarterbacks and better developed offensive linemen to protect these quarterbacks? Wouldn't the NFL owners lose less money if their coaches were better trained through practice, coaching, and development leagues so they didn't have to light guarantee contracts and fire guys on a yearly basis? I get the XFL and USFL exist, but to me, since the league is so interested in European markets and the league would do better with the presence of the internet as a marketing tool, it seems like a no-brainer to revive the product or the project. These guys are not into losing money, man. They're really not. And I hear you. It's like it might benefit them big picture, but if I say, hey, first couple of years, you're going to lose 30, 40, $50 million, it's going to be a no. It's just going to be a no. And sometimes you got to see the forest before the trees, but I don't see them doing it. I think in $32 million, what year was NFL Europa? 15 years ago? So what inflation costs? I mean, what are we talking now? Talking $75 million a year? I don't think they would do it.